Hello and welcome to this new chapter Drum Rack of Ableton Live 10. In this chapter we are going to see how drum rack and macros work. Okay, I am going to start by opening the drum rack by double-clicking here in drums. The drum rack is like a keypad in where each button you can store your sounds, effects and instruments. Each button corresponds with our piano roll. Okay, let's have a look. I double-click in the drum rack to open the piano roll, and all these notes that appear here correspond with all these buttons that we have here. From the lowest, the C-2, to the highest, the G8. All the sounds that we have in these buttons, we could play them by clicking the piano roll, by pressing our computer's keys, or with our MIDI keyboard. For that, I need to activate this button here. As you can see, pressing the A key on my keyboard, the note C3 is activated. If I press the S key, the note D3 is activated, and they match to the notes of these buttons. And it is also indicated in these small squares here. You could lower octaves by pressing the Z key, and you could raise octaves by pressing the X key. This is explained in more detail in Chapter 6, Edit Notes in MIDI. All these small squares match with these drum rack buttons. As you can see, the drum rack is a very powerful tool, since we could have a lot of sounds available here to play with our MIDI keyboard, with our computer's keys, or even to write notes in our piano roll and make our clips. Let's try. We look for a sound and drag it to C3 note button. That corresponds to the A key on our keyboard. Now we take another sound and drag it to this 3 note button. That corresponds to the S key on our keyboard. And now we look for another sound and drag it to E3 note button. That corresponds to the D key on our keyboard. So now we have a drum rack using only 3 keys from our computer. You could also change the parameters of each sound individually. In each of these buttons, we could drag one or more sounds, which will play at the same time. To do that, we need to hold down the Alt key. Let's do a try. If we double-click the button, the sound will appear here. We could change their parameters individually. We could also add effects individually. could add effects to the sound, we could add effects to the entire button, or we could add effects to the track, affecting the entire track. So we could say that we are creating and designing our own sounds. If we press these combos up here, we could see everything more in order and which sound belongs to which. We can do solo, mute, regulate the volume, if we press double click on our clip, we could see the buttons we are using and we could write notes in our piano roll. Now we press play, and as you can see, we could modify the parameters in live. We can do solo, we can mute in the sound or in the button. Okay, now in the drum rack we have these three buttons here. This one here opens and closes the selected button. For example, if this button is selected, this one will open and close the keypad button, showing what is inside. This button here shows us the buttons that we are now using. And this button here opens and closes the macros. Okay, let's see how macros work. The potential of macros is that we could control with just one dial several parameters at the same time. To know which parameter we can map, we need to press this map button here, and the parameters that change color are the ones that we can map. Let's do a try. If I want to map the frequency to macro 1, I use right-click in frequency and I choose Map Macro 1. So now, moving the macro 1 dial, the frequency parameter will move too. I could also adjust the maximum and the minimum frequency just by pressing the map button. And here I can adjust the minimum frequency value, and here I can adjust the maximum frequency value. Okay, now I am going to map the parameter transpose to macro 1 by pressing right click on transpose and choosing map to macro 1. As you can see now, moving the macro 1, the frequency and transpose parameters are moving too. And I could do the same with the rest of the parameters. As you can see, pressing the MIDI button, the macros change their color, indicating to us that they could be controlled by our remote MIDI keyboard. This option could be really useful for live performances. The macros could be automated as well. Let's do a try. First, I copy the clip here, and now I paste it in the arrangement view. I make the clip bigger, I press loop, and I press the automation button. Pressing macro 1, this red line will appear. And this red line is the one that we are going to automatize. Clicking on this red line, these dots will appear. And now I could move them up or down. So now when I press play, the timeline is going to read the automation. And here you can see that the macro is being automated. However, we will talk more about the arrangement and automation in another chapter later on. I hope you found this chapter interesting and useful. See you in the next one.